Hello, everyone. Here we are again with another pre-show. Come on in.
Uh, now, they're still celebrating St. Patrick's Day. Look, the other one over there is a tie that matches mine.
That's okay.
Sure, saints be praised, faith and begorra.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Officer Clancy would be proud.
Definitely.
Hmm. I mean, you saw him in the St. Patrick's Day parade, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. We have someone sent in a picture relating to that, but yeah.
Yeah. 2,000 years of Irish cops.
Yeah. Well,
Move along now. You've all got homes to go to. Nothing to see here. But officer, I think there's 7 people lying dead on the floor of that restaurant. Nah, they just passed out. The boys are having a good time, that's all. Move along now. But that one, look, officer, I'm sure he was shot in the head. Nah, he just grazed himself, hitting the bars. He was on his way to the floor. Move along now.
very good, Charles.
Oh, well, it's St. Patrick's Day here in Trumau.
Is it St. Patrick's Day? It's St. Joseph's here in United States.
Well, it's actually St. Joseph's Day here too, but because we keep Lent kind of strictly, the St. Patrick's celebration got dumped onto St. Joseph's Day. And so all of the beef I purchased for my classmates to celebrate the day is being served to them as we speak. Literally 16 kilos of corned beef, which was cured on the premises. Over the past 8 days, it rested comfortably in its bassins of stuff. And now, having been boiled with potatoes and cabbage and carrots, guess what?
What?
Well, it's now corned beef and cabbage. And it was good, I got to tell you. It was really good.
On a Friday of Lent.
Yeah, St. Joseph's Day.
Sorry, I had to do that because someone was going to say that, so I had to speak for them.
Well, I'm going to use the words of my editor at Crisis Magazine, Eric Sammons, who tweeted today that he wasn't getting into that fight. He said, and I quote, "You can't forbid what the church permits on the one hand. On the other hand, it is salutary if you choose for yourself to keep the Lenten abstinence on this day."
Yeah, you can't bless sin, as they say.
It's not sin if the church permits it.
Did you even know what I was quoting?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
What were you quoting?
Oh, you don't know what I was quoting. I was quoting.
I don't know.
I was quoting Pope Francis.
Oh, no wonder I didn't know. I don't really read his stuff.
Well, this was a big to-do because he came. We talked about this earlier this week.
I know, but I don't know.
He laid down the law. He that was in reference to same-sex unions or whatever.
Yeah, I know. I know. Because you saw what Sir Elton John said in response.
Yeah, hypocrisy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, okay, well, we shouldn't have bankrolled your film then. I mean, okay.
Well,
then that would remove the hypocrisy. Is that what you wanted? Are you happy now?
Yeah, I'm really happy.
No, I mean...
I'm radiating happiness. See, what you don't understand about Elton John, and very few people do, he remembers when rock was young. He was kind of hetero in those days, and he and Susie had so much fun.
Did he switch
holding
like
hands?
That?
And,
really?
What's that?
Okay, whatever. I honestly
don't
care. No, I don't care about.
No. You wanted to? Oh, you want to know if he wrote Crocodile Rock?
No.
Yes. Well, he did.
Okay.
That's what I was quoting, since that's what you want to know. You see, you were afraid to go down that rabbit hole.
Actually, no. Actually, I don't care enough about Elton John. I had a mild curiosity, But then I decided, no, I actually don't care about Elton John.
Well, you remember the song they sang about him.
What song?
Elton John, what's that flower you got on? Could it be a faded rose of days gone by? And did I hear you say he was meeting you here today to take you to his mansion in the sky? Well, he's 41 and his daddy still calls him baby. All the folk round Brownsville say he's crazy. That you never heard the song Elton John,
No.
sung by Helen Reddy?
Nope.
Well, now you've heard it. Not sung by Helen Reddy. You heard it sung by me, but nevertheless, she was the one who made it famous.
What year?
In the 70s, 77, I think, 76, something like that. I was in high school.
I wasn't born.
No, you weren't. Because you see, life is a lot like American Graffiti. Where were you in 62?
Okay.
You still weren't born. I was a happy 2-year-old doing what 2-year-olds do.
Okay. All right. Shall we proceed to the questions?
Well, that's such a final point. You seem very businesslike today, as though you just come from an end-of-the-year meeting with the accountants. Usually you're not like this until the week after Christmas.
Well, businessmen generally are all business.
Well, no, you're not. I mean, if that were the case, you'd spend a lot less in the executive dining room. No. Has something happened? We're in front of our patrons. You can be honest. It's okay.
Nothing has happened, Charles. It's just, it's been a rough Lent, right? I mean, it's wearing me down with all just the caviar and the lobster without the steak, without the filet mignon.
I am sorry. My heart goes out to you.
It can make one irritable.
Well, you know what I'm going to do for you? And I'm doing it right this second. You ready?
Ready.
I'm radiating good vibes in your direction.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you for radiating good vibes.
You're welcome. See, and people say we Californians are morons. We showed them, didn't we?
All right.
Fine, you sound fatigued. Throw out the questions. Let's see what we got.
All right, question from Thomas.
Hello, Thomas.
I've begun reading A History of the Protestant Reformation in England and Ireland by William Cobbett. What is Charles able to say about Cobbett's life, his beliefs and views, and his relationship with his contemporary Catholics and Anglo-Catholics?
Well, we'll go from the bottom up. He from the latest first or whatever. He didn't really know too many Anglo-Catholics because Anglo-Catholicism was not. It was just beginning to get underway when he was going into his decline. And he knew Catholics socially, but his big claim to fame was as a radical Tory, a Tory radical. He came to the United States. He immigrated to the U.S. He started out. He was kind of a Republican. He thought the French Revolution was a great deal. Then he came to the United States, and that totally changed his mind completely. And he became a total monarchist and decided that the forces that the American Revolution had unleashed were terrible and had done Americans very little good. He wrote what were called the Peter Porcupine Papers when he was in Philadelphia. And let's just say that as a result of that, he was asked to go back to England, which he did. Back in England, he soon came to realize that Tory that he was all in favor of church and king. But the church and king he was in favor of, well, let's just say he was much more in favor of what had been gotten rid of with the Glorious Revolution than what followed it. And he began to realize that a lot of the evils that he saw in the England of his day were directly traceable to the Reformation. He never became a Catholic, to my knowledge, but he did come to believe that the Reformation had been a terrible error. And one of the things about the book is that, about the book, the History of the Protestant Reformation, is that it's very lively writing, because he was a very lively writer, and he had definite likes and dislikes, and you know exactly what they are when you read him. The other book that he's most famous for is called Rural Rides, which are basically his accounts of riding through the English countryside, which he loved to do, and just seeing what he saw, old churches and manor houses and things like that, which he really, really loved, as opposed to the terrible slums of London, which he also wrote about and exposed. So, his take on the Reformation came from his love of England. And he came to see that the Reformation was what had really pushed England onto a false step, and that so many of the terrible things that had happened since then, the Civil War, the triumph of Cromwell, the murder of Charles I, the way the Industrial Revolution went, everything, as far as he was concerned, its origins lay in the Protestant revolt. And even there, it's interesting that at the end of the book, he compares the charges against George III in our Declaration of Independence to the charges against James II in the so-called Glorious Revolution. And he finds them equally spurious, having come from a similar source. What makes me laugh about his account of it is that the audience for whom he was writing were all for William III and all against George III. The modern Catholic who reads, the modern Catholic American who reads it, tends to be all against George III, but on some level for William III. It's funny that the same truths remain the same, but fashion changes. Anyway, that's William Cobbett. He also, Sir John Biggs Davison's great book, Tory Lives, includes him as one of the greatest Tory politicians in history.
Okay, a bunch of questions from Mr. Fugu.
He of the deadly fish.
That's right. How does normalcy bias factor into considerations of just war theory?
Normalcy bias. Well, okay, firstly, we know, I hope, that normalcy is not a real word. It was made up by President Harding during his campaign. It's really normality. So we should be talking about normality virus. Or bias, rather. Maybe virus, too. Normality bias. Well, apparently it's the concept that people really don't believe that things could go too crazy. So they don't prepare for terrible events. I don't see that really signifies in just war theory, considering how many unjust wars our country has fought. It hardly seems that anything has stopped us from fighting them.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of like
I mean,
we err on the other side.
Yeah, for us, normality is the United States going to war for some great cause, supposedly. Yeah, that's our normality. So I don't think it really works in.
Was Blaise Pascal a heretic? Was he too harsh on the Jesuits of his day, or was he striking at the root of an emerging problem?
No, yes, it's a good question. No, he wasn't a heretic. Yes, he was too harsh on the Jesuits of his day. As far as an emerging problem goes, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the certainly the Jesuits, after their reestablishment, began to develop problems. But whether or not you can really trace those to the body that existed before the suppression, I don't know.
Well, what
See,
do
the thing
we?
you've got to bear in mind about the Jesuits is that they had a 1775 or 4 to 1817, the order didn't exist outside of Russia and Prussia. So there was a short enough time for there to be a certain number of younger Jesuits who re-upped with them when they were reestablished. But how great the continuity really was, I couldn't tell you.
Well, what are we talking about when we reference these things? So, how
Well,
did he
Pascal believed
criticize the Jesuits?
of being very shifty in moral matters, casuistry, basically.
Anything specific? I mean, it's still pretty vague.
Well, I mean, basically, Pascal favored the Jansenists, although he wasn't one himself. And he didn't like the Jesuits because they were very good at coming up with extenuating circumstances.
Is Jansenism a heresy or just a very flawed style of spirituality?
It's a heresy.
Yeah.
Condemned in the bull Unigenitus.
What's the what specifically is it a heresy of?
Well, basically, it's sort of Catholic Jansenism. For instance, the Jansenists would not permit you to go to communion unless you were absolutely sure that you were perfect. And in fact, they reveled in not going to communion.
See,
because they believed it showed that they were holy.
But that's not a heresy per se. That's just like an incredibly flawed, take on it, right?
To give you the exact definition, rather than rely upon what's left of my mind, basically, in Unigenitus, 101 propositions were condemned. Grace works with omnipotence and is irresistible. Without grace, man can only commit sin. Christ died for the elect only. Every love that is not supernatural is evil. Without supernatural love, there can be no hope in God, no obedience to his law, no good work, no prayer, no merit, no religion. The prayer of the sinner and his other good acts performed out of fear of punishment are only new sins. The church comprises only the just and the elect.
Wait. Say one of the prayer of the sinner is...
And his other good acts performed out of fear of punishment are only new sins.
It's saying prayer in that context is a sin?
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty weird, man.
Yeah, well, it was pretty weird.
Seems like a old school version of Rad Trads or something.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
Where it's just like just over the top.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Huh. Wow, that's a lot of weird stuff. That's a lot of weird, wild stuff, Charles.
Yeah.
So I guess that is what's behind the first part of this question when he asks, was Pascal a heretic? So he wasn't a Jansenist, but he favored Jansenists when it came to
their political fights with the Jesuits.
Okay. Was Jansenism a reaction to anything? You know?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of what morality was like in the 17th century, yeah.
So it was really loose, huh?
Loose enough, yeah.
It's hard to understand or relate to the looseness of prior centuries given this century.
Well, It's difficult because at no time was vice officially and publicly encouraged to the exclusion of virtue by the authorities.
Yeah.
I mean, the authorities themselves might have been tremendously hypocritical, but you can only have hypocrisy where you have standards.
Right. That's why I can't stand that hypocrisy line. That's one of Satan's biggest, I don't know.
Lures.
Yeah. It's like, oh, look at all these hypocrites. Well,
At least they know they're wrong and they wouldn't try to cover it up.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's the difference between exposing your sins in public and saying, aren't they virtues? And having everyone else say, oh, yes, they are. And a sinner trying to hide his sins and pretend that he's virtuous.
Well, I see that in just internet vulgarity and grossness in general is people don't even try to hide like anything.
No, they're not hypocritical. I mean, a pig rolling around in the mud isn't a hypocrite.
Exactly. And that's basically how these people behave. It's like there's no shame,
No, you can only have hypocrisy where you have standards.
Yeah.
We have no standards. We're just a bunch of pigs rolling around in the mud.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing, except the pigs get turned into bacon and ham. And I'm sure that'll happen to us one day.
Bacon and ham are delicious, though.
Not if you're the bacon and ham in question.
You can be delicious as bacon and ham.
Not to yourself. You're not around to enjoy the taste.
People can identify as delicious. All right. Next question. Charles has mentioned before that the USA is in a similar position to pagan nations before they were evangelized. Can Charles elaborate on how faithful Catholics can serve as agents of evangelization in this regard?
Well, sure. With every step you take, with every song you make. The first thing to do is to realize that you're here to evangelize. That God placed you here in this place and time so that you would make converts. So, what do? Well, a lot of things you do. And some of them are very basic. You don't have to get out onto the street and preach. Be as public as possible with your friends and relatives about your religion. Invite them to go to Mass with you. If there are things like baptisms or confirmations or anything like that for your children or whatever, throw parties for them and invite friends. Always send out religious Christmas and Easter cards. Always. In your workplace, if you can get away with it, put up a picture of the Blessed Virgin. Something like that. And if anybody asks you anything about anything, be prepared to respond.
You know what hit me this past week is that people, even Catholics, are inherently reluctant and even uncomfortable to discuss what they believe.
Well, that's true, because on some level, especially those of us who, shall we say, minority faiths, we understand that we're only here on sufferance. On a very real level, we understand that all the drivel about free speech and equality and all, it's drivel. And we know that our masters are against us. We understand that on a deep, non-intellectual level.
That's interesting. My take on that was actually completely different. I felt that even Catholics, or just everybody, doesn't like discussing belief because of our Freemasonic culture of behavior over belief, conduct over creed.
Well,
so, in other
true.
words, the creed doesn't matter as long as you're a nice person. So why are you risking making waves and being judgmental?
That's true, but that goes back to fear of our ownership, fear of our masters. I mean, we'd be stepping out of line, wouldn't we?
Guess so, yeah.
Yeah. We know that we're second class. We know that we're only here on sufferance. And so we respond accordingly.
Okay. But I mean, like, even amongst Catholics, though,
Yeah.
you know? No, I mean, like,
We're,
between Catholics, where it's not. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
because we're cowards. I'm not saying that cowardice is a bad thing. I mean, we've been doing it for 250 years, and we've had 2 Catholics in the White House, so it must be working.
Yeah. All right.
You heard how President President Biden was in Arizona yesterday, and he kind of slipped.
What? Yeah, he said President Kamala Harris.
Poor old Joe. You know, they did a disservice to America's senior citizens by forcing him to run. Poor old guy. Oh well.
All right. To what extent was Frank Capra's World War II propaganda film series Why We Fight true, and to what extent was it false or misleading?
Honestly, well, I've heard of it, of course, and I've read about it. I've never seen it. So my answer is, I don't know.
Why do we fight?
Because we're beating the Nazis and we're fighting for freedom.
So is that false or misleading?
Not if we aren't allied to Joseph Stalin. Let's remember Pearl Harbor as we go to meet the foe. Let's remember Pearl Harbor as we did the Alamo. We will always remember how they died for liberty. So let's remember Pearl Harbor. 'Twill go down in history.
All right.
What?
How's Charles so knowledgeable about video games? As of late, he's been referencing Max Payne. Before you know it, he'll be spouting off esports lingo like it's going out of style.
Well, Max Payne, The Fall of Max Payne, a noir love story. Well, to be honest with you, I don't really know nearly as much about video games, Red Dead Redemption, zombie application, uh, as you might think. In fact, I kind of checked out. Um, oh, wow. I kind of checked out of, what do you call it? Video games with Pac-Man. So the truth is, I didn't follow them. I only knew about Max Payne, frankly, because of when it came out, they had really, really good billboard advertising. And then I learned about Red Dead Redemption and World of Warcraft because of my nephew Albert, who was into that sort of thing. I've never, except for a memorable moment when, except for a memorable moment when my nephew took me into World of Warcraft and created a character to show me how it was done. This was a takeoff on Taylor Swift called Taylor Swift's. The only skill she had was dancing, but boy, could she dance. Anyway, that was my one venture into that sort of thing. But I'm very happy. I'm quite happy What's the word? I'm quite happy to throw out references from time to time just to attempt to stay current. How's that?
That sounds good.
All right.
On a sort of related note, how does one defeat the hedonic treadmill on this side of eternity?
Pray more. Go to Mass. Try to keep the feasts of the liturgical year. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, that would do it. In other words, try to overcome the unnatural through the natural.
Right. Final question. I've heard that supposedly someone wrote an article about Charles's ominous relationship with the occult. Could Charles comment on that if he feels comfortable doing so?
Sure.
Please do so.
Well, that's if I feel comfortable. Well, you can ask me if I feel comfortable.
Do you feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. My deep, dark connection with the occult. All right. Are you ready?
Ready.
Can your heart stand the awful truth about grave robbers from outer space? Oh, sorry, that was Criswell. Well, the truth is that I do indeed know a good deal about that kind of thing. Worse yet, I know a lot of people who do that sort of thing. Why, you ask? Because I was raised in Hollywood, that's why, in the 60s and 70s. And I can tell you quite honestly that I have written in one journal, actually two journals, it was dedicated to that kind of thing, Gnosis Magazine and Fate. Although Fate, to be honest, was more with hauntings and Fortean phenomena and that kind of stuff. I've always found that people who are interested in that sort of thing, at least some of them, not all of them, number one, are more interested in a direct experience of the divine, if you will, than a lot of other people. Number one. Number two, they often have an interest in things that smack of antiquity. To put this another way, they tend to be people, often from Protestant or Jewish backgrounds, who, if exposed to the Catholic faith, will tend to see that it has what they're really after. But no one's interested, of course, in evangelizing them because it's not respectable. Of course, people who feel that way generally don't evangelize anyone else either, but, you just got to accept these things. So, having grown up how and as and where I did, I could read the tarot cards better than most Renaissance fair fortune tellers can. You bet. I know what they mean. Although it's interesting that the very best known deck of tarot cards used today, the so-called Rider-Waite deck, was designed by a lady named Pamela Colman Smith, an English artist, and she converted to Catholicism afterwards, which is probably why there's so many Catholic symbols in her deck. And therein lies an interesting point. When I meet people, as I often do, who are interested in that sort of thing, I'm able to point out to them things that they wouldn't catch on their own, and that certainly nobody else would point out to them. This has gotten me into all sorts of trouble with all sorts of people who are very worried about the growth of the occult. Now, mind you, there's a lot that such people tend to tolerate in other areas. Conduct over creed comes to mind. But oh, do they get excited about Harry Potter? Well, what can I tell you? The first time I ever encountered this sort of thing was after I started writing for Gnosis Magazine. an individual who turned out to be, and I'm using the words quite literally, a neo-Nazi. He went on a campaign to expose me as a writer of occult articles in satanic magazines, or vice versa, meaning Gnosis in this case. So I told my editor at Gnosis what this fellow had said, and he laughed, and he said, he advertises with us. And then he sent me a ton of the stuff that the guy was writing. And when I say he's a neo-Nazi, I'm not exaggerating. By a neo-Nazi, I mean a person who thinks Hitler was right. That's my definition of neo-Nazi, not someone I don't like, but someone who favors Hitler. Anyway, this was, for a few months, this was a bit of a problem for me, and I had all sorts of people jumping up and down. But in the midst of it, I got a postcard from a lady in Asheville, North Carolina, who said to me that she had converted to Catholicism, and she partially blamed my articles in Gnosis for her conversion. And that as a result, she had moved to Asheville to be close to the Basilica of St. Lawrence. Now, she had no idea of the guff that I was going through at that time. But I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that postcard of hers arrived at the best possible time for me. Because I thought, you know what? Yell at me all you like, call me whatever you want, paint me any color you choose. That one lady is a Catholic, partly because of what I wrote. So the rest of it, I don't care. And so it's been from that day to this. Call me an occultist, call me a tarot reader, call me whatever you want. But if, when we come to die, you and me, whoever you might be, those souls, if I've contributed to their salvation, will stand up for me. I hope you'll have someone to stand up for you in the same way. And honestly, I just wish the kind of energy that goes into the sort of search and destroy stuff that trads love were put into evangelizing people. Interestingly enough, I won't mention names, but you know who I'm talking about, Vincenzo. Got a note from a fellow who some years ago went on a tirade against me as a disciple of Aleister Crowley. And he was able to do this because he claimed to be an expert on Crowley and drew all sorts of connections between my work and Crowley's. Now, this was interesting to me because I've read 2 poems of Crowley's. I've never read any of his books. I didn't like his poems, to be honest. And that fellow, all these years later, had the decency to write me a letter of apology.
No.
You remember it?
Yeah, I do. I looked him up. I was the one who gave you.
I know that. That's why I'm pointing this out.
This
In
particular.
the interest of full disclosure, I think our audience have the right to know that you saw it first.
Anyhow, that guy's life, he apologized because his own life is blowing up right now in a public way. So he feels remorse.
I prefer to think of it as a change of heart.
One caveat is in terms of the tarot reading stuff, you've historically said that fortune cookies are more accurate than tarot cards. I just like
That's for sure.
Just in case anyone's confused about Charles's position on tarot cards, okay?
Yeah, I mean, so you got to remember a few things. As I like to say when I read them, the church condemns fortune telling and anything else that would limit free will. This is why, for instance, in regards to astrology, some of the church fathers would say, well, the stars impel but they do not compel. Very often people will use fortune telling as a way to excuse themselves from their sinfulness. You say, I had no control. Mars was in the ascendant. What was I to do?
Okay.
Well, no, really. That's so that's the first thing. The second thing is to bear in mind that the if the recent year has shown us anything, I don't know a tarot reader around who foresaw the great pandemic.
Yeah.
So, just a word to the wise. But I will say, the tarot deck, especially the Rider-Waite deck, is very beautiful, very evocative. I tell you that the Ace of Cups, with its image at once of baptism and communion, and its reference to the Holy Grail, is a lovely, lovely image. I could say the same as some of the others, but that's my favorite. Look it up, the Ace of Cups. You'll see what I mean.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
Yes, I do. It is St. Joseph's Day, on which I'm recording. But because it's St. Joseph's Day, here in Austria, we've gotten a break from fasting and abstinence. That's why I'm happy and, well, you know. But I will say this much. We have another week coming up, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what's coming at the end of this week?
What?
Passion Sunday. 2 weeks. Palm Sunday. You know what that means?
What does it mean?
3 weeks. Easter Sunday.
What does that mean?
It means Easter.
No, I thought you just keep going on and on throughout the calendar.
No, it means that we're definitely on the downhill slope of Lent. We're heading toward Holy Week and Easter and the wonderful mysteries. I mean, you know, ladies and gentlemen, you've got Passion Week and Holy Week left. Get yourself in order. Get your minds right.
You know, it might feel like a downhill slope for those who eat meat on Fridays, but for those of us who are doing rigorous fasting abstinence, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, I don't
can
know
see
that
how
lobster,
some people say it's downhill, though. That's easy. We're just cruising. We're just cruising through Lent.
Lobster 3 times a day. Champagne breakfasts. I mean, come on. Life isn't too hard in the executive suite.
All right, Charles. All right.
I mean, I'm not going to say who because I know they'd be embarrassed if I were to mention the name. Let's just say that one senior executive who will go nameless went so far as to bathe in champagne and said that it wasn't covered by Lenten restrictions.
Well, technically, he's correct, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm sure he is. I don't know any other company, though, that would boast an executive who would boast of having bathed in champagne.
Well, you know, not many. I mean, it's a problem with our society. You know, we don't act classy anymore, you see? With
I don't
these
think
sorts of
bathing in
exalted
champagne
things.
is classy. I think it's conspicuous consumption.
Is it consumption, though?
Oh, I think knowing the fellow in mind, and I'm not mentioning Jeff's name, but knowing the fellow I'm thinking of, I can imagine that. Let's just say he lay there in the tub and like went. Well, you know how when you're in a full tub, you sort of go down a bit, the water's up like so. I can see him doing that on, fairly repeatedly.
All right. So be it, Charles.
It strikes me as a combination between, on the one hand, decadent, and on the other, kind of gross. But happy Lent. We all have our penances we're going through. I guess that's his.
All right. Well, so that's it for the pre-show, but stay tuned for the full episode coming right at you.
We're here for you, ladies and gentlemen. Do like the costuming, by the way. Keep it up.